Agent and Chief Executive of Jupin International, Jack Jupin. Always a pleasure to have you. I'm so glad that you're here because, Jack, we had heard that there was possibly other suspects involved. Then it went back to this lone wolf. And every time there's anything about a lone wolf attack, I always want to talk to you because of your experience. Jabbar steered around a police blockade to carry out the attack. And there was this ISIS flag that we were talking about on the back of the truck. So let's start with your initial thoughts of how this all went down. And what do you think happened that police couldn't have intervened in that moment more quickly?
Yeah, from a law enforcement position, it was what I would call an epic failure, not blocking off those streets completely and allowing bike lanes and the sidewalks to be open. There are ways of containing those. I've worked special events such as the Super Bowl and other major events. I've protected dignitaries. There are ways of doing this. I know there's always the fear if there's an emergency, how can we get people out? But there are ways of doing that with what we call Jersey barriers. You can use, dump trucks, which are often used in many events to prevent people from getting in there. Clearly, Jabbar was on a mission, and he was going to accomplish it any way he had to, and with total disregard.
Right. That's what others have said, those in New Orleans who said, look, if he didn't go down Bourbon Street, he might have just gone right around to another busy street, because obviously there's a lot of people celebrating New Year's Eve in New Orleans. And I just want to, before I play some sound, I wanted to ask you about the thought that it looked like he was acting alone, then it seemed as though he had accomplices, then it went back to it looks like he acted alone. So how do officials start to drill down onto that when it's so early in the investigation?
Well, that's exactly right, Laura. And the first thing the FBI is doing in this case is they're looking not only at his social media, but all of his media, all of his communications, his computer, his phone, all that type of stuff. They're looking at to see who was he in communication with, if he was inspired. My understanding is the thought is on this one that he was radicalized. Most times that does happen over the internet, where people are viewing videos and, rhetoric coming from terrorist organizations. And after a while, that's, I think even some family members have alluded to the fact that he became radicalized over a period of time. As your last guest said, he was having dreams that this was what he was supposed to do. And unfortunately, he did it. And this is where we are now.
Yeah, I guess there's no timeline once you become radicalized to starting that train of thought to doing something, because it was my understanding that that really started over the summer. That's when things got really serious with this, allegedly, and according to people who knew him. So from the summer to New Year's Eve doesn't seem like a huge amount of time, but I guess it can go quickly. I wanted to play you some sound from the Lieutenant Governor, Billy Nungesser, who told me last night on Dan Abrams Live about some of the security measures. Take a listen.
Unfortunately, the mayor dropped the ball. And not that you could ever prevent a crazy person from doing this, but it could have been minimal. It could have been less attractive. The fact that you could go on the website for the city and they posted that these barriers were out, what benefit to the public is that? That only benefits someone that's looking to do harm. You can't even find out on the website when they're going to fix the pothole in your street, but they would post this on the city website. That is unexcusable.
All right. So do you think that that's a fair assessment, Jack?
I do. He nailed it on that one. You can't even find out, basic information about a lot of simple things, but yet we put our security posture out there. And it's something that, we always learn a lesson from these events. We have multitude of events upcoming. We have the Super Bowl. We have the inauguration. You have major college football events upcoming. And obviously the Notre Dame game was postponed because of this Notre Dame-Georgia game. So we really need to be diligent about what we're putting out to the public. At the FBI, we will not, and the Secret Service is very similar, we will not put out our security posture. I worked the Super Bowl event at MetLife, and the amount of law enforcement entities that go into that is enormous. and we had multitude of plans, and they were not known to anybody except us. Now, can that get out to the public? Yes, it can, but it doesn't help us to advertise to the public what we're going to do.
Right. And as we move forward, you mentioned some of the big events that are coming up. Look, there's big events all year long, but especially with inauguration coming up and the Super Bowl. What can we do as a country? What can we do in these cities where we have these big events moving forward? Because we're talking about the threat of copycats. We're talking about lone wolves. And when you and I have talked in the past, we've talked about how a lot of people don't know that there's a lone wolf in his basement doing something, plotting something, and you don't know until it happens. And that's, I think, is the worrisome part of one of the many worrisome parts of this, is how to detect that there's a possible lone wolf coming for you or your city.
You're correct, Laura, and you and I have talked about this in the past. I have worked those exact investigations of lone wolf individuals. And the biggest problem is when they do sit in their basement and they get radicalized online and they don't talk to anybody. The FBI thrives on human intelligence. And believe it or not, we have done an excellent job. I know the public doesn't always see it, but the FBI does an extraordinary job of recruiting and assessing people to work with us. And the American public would be quite shocked if they knew how many people work with us, people that they think they don't even like us work with us. But when you have a lone wolf individual, that individual is not talking to anybody.
Right.
They're not promoting it publicly. They're the most dangerous people we deal with.
I have to leave it there, Jack, but just one quick thing before we go. I got 20 seconds. If you could just tell people how to stay safe out on the streets at these big events, what do you tell your family members?
I tell my family, my company trains this, situational awareness. Be aware of your surroundings at all times, where you are, what looks out of place, what is somebody doing that's not acting normal, whether you know them or not. That's what I would suggest.
And trust your gut, right?
Always trust your gut.
Trust your gut. All right, former FBI Supervisory Agent Jack Jupin, always great to have you. So glad that you're on the program. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Laura. Take care.
Thank you.